Hello and welcome to the Mississippi Valley Archaeology Center's UWL Archaeology Alumni Podcast. I'm MVAC archaeologist Cindy Kutchik. Through this podcast series, we're connecting with alumni of the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. We're getting perspectives on their experiences at UWL, their involvement with MVAC, and their path after graduation. More broadly, we're looking at the skills and insights they've taken from their time in La Crosse into their professional lives and beyond. Today's guest is Tonya Droessler. She attended UWL from 1987 to 1991 and majored in geography with a minor in anthropology. After working in archaeology and the Peace Corps, she went on to earn her master's in counseling education from UW-Platteville in 2002. She is a licensed school counselor and licensed practicing counselor and currently works in Michigan. Welcome, Tonya. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
To begin, you started attending UWL in 1987, not long after MVAC started and before the archaeology major was offered. So how did you study and get experience in archaeology while pursuing geography and anthropology?
It was all MVAC. I went to La Crosse because I knew about the field school and the archaeology, the MVAC. I have family that lived in West Salem, so I spent a couple summers there, and archaeology was something that always interested me, and I thought I had to go to Madison for that. Um, so we I would spend my two summers in West Salem, which also had a library, which I did not have access to growing up in the little town I lived in. So I got books on archaeology, and then I learned about the program, the organization at UWL. And so one thing just kind of led to another. And when it came time to apply for colleges, I knew about the field school and I thought, well, this is going to be one way to find out if I really want to do archaeology because I was not known to get dirty growing up. Dirt was not something I played with. So it was just kind of one of those things that like, okay, if you really like it, this is going to be the time to find out. So I ended up at La Crosse and then, was able to get that field school right away. And um, at that point, I never like looked back. Um, MVAC gave me the field school, and at that time, MVAC, you had to volunteer before you could work or get paid for anything. So we had to, I don't remember how many hours we had to volunteer, but Connie had just started. I think Cindy Stiles might have been the lab person, and then Connie took over, and I had work study. So um, and then yeah, I just stayed with MVAC all through school and summers.
Can you talk more about the field school and that first experience actually doing archaeology out in the dirt and digging around?
Uh-huh. Yeah, we were at, I was trying to think, believe the site was called Midway, and it was at the top of a quarry and it was going to be destroyed. So it was an emergency, I think they called it salvage archaeology at the time. And we were out there, I think there might have been 20 of us in that group. And it was Ernie Bozart and Jim Thiel. I'm trying to think if Thieler was there or not. But there was just Raleigh was there, Raleigh Rodell. Just kind of a core group. Connie, I'm just randomly naming names. People were there, and it was it was just life changing, to find things in the ground that nobody has touched for thousands of years. They made sure at the field school that we got all different skills. We learned to use a transit. We had the piece plot. I think that's what it was called. It's been a long time since I had to do that. Reading maps, reading soil levels, learning how to map, learning how to put that information in notes that somebody else could read it 20 years from now and maybe write a report or follow up on it. Just a lot of working together as a team. You didn't know who your pit partner was going to be for a week. And so you had to figure out how to get along with them, or if we were all learning, but maybe somebody wasn't doing things as well as they could have, or they didn't always show up. So just, a lot of probably soft skills at that
Mm.
time that I didn't realize I was probably getting. Um,
Yeah. And then after that field school, that opens up so many more opportunities. So as you were working through UWL and getting experience at MVAC, what sort of things were you able to do with MVAC, kind of in the field or in the lab?
oh, Connie kept us on our toes. They were doing a lot of contract work. And, back then, I think we got $5 an hour. And that was big money compared to working at the mall or something else. And it was on campus, so I didn't have to worry about transportation. We were doing, I remember Raleigh and Ernie would get some different contracts. So we'd have weekend work, then we'd have the lab work to follow those projects up, cataloging, washing, um, organizing, that kind of thing. And then after field school, I got the opportunity. The following summer, I worked for the state of Wisconsin. They were doing the big Tremaine, and that
Oh,
was a big project. There were a lot of people hired from all over the United States worked on that project. And then continuing through school, yeah, just a lot of contract work, a lot of lab work. Eventually, we did get to do a little report writing. I did one short one with Ernie just to kind of get my finger or my toes wet, I guess, as they say, because I had never done that before. We just did all the grunt work, I guess.
yeah. And now students do a senior thesis or project with the archaeology program. Uh, did you get to do anything like that with your studies, or I guess how helpful was it to have that experience with a little bit of report writing and short reports?
It was really helpful because we didn't have I think the archaeology major maybe got finalized the year after I graduated.
Mm.
So they were doing all the legwork to get that done. I remember they hired a new person in the department because it was like a old world archaeology class that I took because I had never, besides Jim Gallagher, I'd never really did much with that or learned much about it. Um, we they were just so instrumental in making sure we were exposed to everything. That was also a time where soils were becoming really important. So with their encouragement, that's probably what led me to the geography major. And I don't remember the man's name, but just taking soils classes and just how important that was. Uh, Taking cartography classes, which now probably nobody knows how to draw a map or anything anymore because it's all electronic. They just, the staff at MVAC and the people who taught the classes were just really effective in making sure that we were ready for the next step. Whether that was graduate school, whether we wanted to continue being, I don't know if they still use the term shovel bum, but if you just wanted to get in the field and work, they when I applied for a job, I could answer yes to every question. Have you done this? Have you done that? And they just made sure we had everything that we needed.
And after graduating, what sorts of experiences did you have given all of the archaeological knowledge and skills you were able to develop when you were at UWL?
I was employed, I worked in archaeology until 1997, and that was between working for the State Historical Society out of Madison, which took you all around the state doing DOT projects. And then in 94, I went to the Center for American Archaeology down in Campsville, Illinois. And back then, that was a big organization in the sense of they had a lot of projects going on. They did a lot of CRM work throughout the state of Illinois. and they also had a huge field school there. It was from the University of Chicago. And then that woman, Jane Dykstra, then she went to Arizona. And so then the students came from there. So there's just this, um, just always something going on. And so I did all kinds of contract work. I mean, I ended up, because of MVAC, yeah, I was employed. I got to be, a assistant cruise supervisor when I was in Center for American Archaeology. I ended up being the lab supervisor. It just, yeah, gave me those skills I needed to kind of move up the ladder and stay employed. And
And what was it like adjusting to doing archaeology in a little different area of the US, down in Illinois?
it was it it was interesting in the sense because it just the huge mound culture down there, the floodplain. So, a lot of times, we had to use what's the word? Like a post hole digger, a machine, because our holes would have to be so deep to get through the floodplain, to get down. So just some different techniques to that were used. I was really familiar with Oniota. Some of these terms are just starting to come back to me now. I was really familiar with that because that's what a lot of the projects I worked on. And so down there, it just became more woodland. Trying to think different soil. I think in Wisconsin, I felt like I was really pampered. I got a lot of sand or easy digging. Maybe the hardest thing was going through roots. Down there, there could be a lot of clay to get through. Um, but the other interesting thing is, any job, anything you do, everybody has their own way of doing things and what they think is the best way or the right way. So there's that learning curve too of you're just constantly learning a new technique or learning a new style of analysis or something.
And what eventually led you to graduate school?
So in, the mid late 90s, things were changing in Illinois. The Center for American Archaeology, um, I don't really know all the details, but something legislatively changed and the contracts were not going to be awarded to the Center for American Archaeology for one region. And so it was this sort of, you're also realizing without a master's degree, you're not going to go much farther than lab supervisor, shovel bum. And while that was fine, I also realized like, yeah, I like what I do, but I don't like it enough to pay for grad school. And that's just not where I was. And so, like, as I said, things were changing and I needed to make a decision. And while I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, I had always wanted to do the Peace Corps, and it was just kind of a natural break. Like, okay, I can sign off at the CAA and do 2 years volunteering and, figure out what I want to be when I grow up type of thing. And so that's while I was a volunteer, I was able to use a lot of my skills because you are working with a lot of people you don't know. And I ended up doing gardening and farming and soil conservation. Uh, well, there was one more thing I can't remember, but during my service, so my soils background was very helpful. While I didn't have experience in tropical soils, like it was just extremely helpful though because I knew what water could do or the composite of soil and erosion and just different things like that and how it would affect um, the hillside or crop harvesting or whatever we were working on. And then when I came back, I had kind of like narrowed down my options and thought about who what life would be like for the next 10 or 15 years. And yeah, school counseling or counseling it was going to be just counseling. And then I just really picked up on school counseling. And that's what I decided to do when I returned from Panama. So
So in pursuing that graduate degree, were there things you pulled from your time at UWL and skills from working at MBAC that you were able to pull into that?
yes. Um, One, I actually was able to be employed for my gap time of like 9 months from returning from Peace Corps before graduate school started. The Historical Society signed me back on,
Mhm.
so that was after that 2-year gap, I got to do a mound survey along Mississippi along the River Road, which was great to connect that way. But it also made me realize that I'm probably, still don't want to go to graduate school for it. But I think you know, learning how to ask questions, working as a team, um, taking advantage of your resources, attention to detail. As I mentioned before, some of the soft skills, clearly, I use those a lot in counseling. They were just all enhanced by going to graduate school. Learning a research methodology, all of that was it just carried over from, they're all just skills I continue to use today.
And speaking of today, what is your current position and what are you involved in doing now?
I am a high school counselor for 9th through 12th grade in a high school in Michigan. And I think I just completed my 23rd year of counseling and I've done all levels. I started off in pre-K through 5th grade and then did a couple years of middle school, which I hope I never have to do again. And then it's been high school ever since. So I feel like, I've learned a lot working with in my variety of background, whether it be archaeology, the Peace Corps, the odd jobs that I've had, they all have just opened my world as far as the people I meet and work with. We're not a cookie cutter. Everyone's, if arc at UWL and MVAC just, really opened my world from, you know, being from a little town in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, and then coming to a place where not everybody's white and not everybody speaks English, and people have different ways of looking at the world and different interpretations of what they see and hear. That's just been a lifelong gift that I use, as I said, daily. And so I've just, yeah, MVAC. And MVAC's just been really important. I mean, I give MVAC a lot of credit. I mean, I am a donor from the first paycheck after I graduated. I think from probably 25 or 30 years, I've been donating just because I feel like what I've given or what I've received from them has been really influential. I wouldn't be where am now.
We've already touched on a lot of, general life skills, soft skills. Is there anything else you learned at UWL and back that turned out to be helpful, or things that you wish you would have learned or pursued while you were here in La Crosse?
Um, one thing that did, I still, a piece of advice I got when I was looking for schools, and as a school counselor working with students who are talking about the next chapter of life, I frequently remind students that, especially for your undergrad, if you're going to pursue a 4-year degree, you know, don't discount the small schools. People gravitate to the name, the reputation, that kind of stuff. And I easily could have missed a gem just because I thought Madison was the be all end all. And that was, and if my mom is the one that really was just like, just give it a try. Just, I wanted to be, back then you didn't have cell phones. So I needed to be far enough away that, a long distance call wasn't going to happen because it was too expensive to call all the time. And so, La Crosse was 2.5 hours away from where I grew up. And I just frequently tell my students, like, there's nothing wrong with being a big fish in a little pond. And if you go to these smaller schools, you that have what you're looking for, you have access to professors and research and hands-on experience. And you don't, like, I would have never gotten that at Madison. I know I wouldn't have. I wasn't assertive enough. I wasn't, I was just kind of like a little mouse, just waiting. And UWL, changed that. And I think a lot of small schools change that. And when you want them to pursue those graduate degrees, that's when you can start, broadening and maybe look for the big school. But I just think, La Crosse has so much to offer, and it's right there, and all you have to do is ask. And the teacher, I'm speaking, 30 or so years later, but I remember Jim Thieler would invite us over for dinner, and we would go out and have a drink after a dig. We were just constantly networking and learning from all these people. And I feel like I carry that over and working with my students, just trying to be available and hopefully just open enough that they can ask me anything and I can give them my 2 cents and they can do with it what they want. But that's probably the best piece of advice that I got was, give La Crosse a chance because, the small schools they have a lot more to offer than people realize.
Oh, yeah. And wrapping up here, any other bits of advice that you have for current or prospective students, people who are thinking, maybe I do want to go to archaeology and choose a small school or a smaller school like La Crosse?
Mhm. I would definitely say get the field school done right away. I feel my experience has been working with students, whether it's whatever career you decide to do, if you don't get some hands-on experience right away, it is very disappointing to find out 3 or 4 years later that that's not really what you're cut out for or what you want to do. Um, I would also say if your professor says these are my office hours or the teacher offers you an opportunity, don't think twice. Just take him up on it or her up on it. Connie, I just remember Connie offered us so many opportunities, sometimes too many, that we did have to turn them down, but they were just if you always say no, you're never going to know. And ask, because the worst that you can be told is no, and then you'll just ask someone else. So, but
Great. Well, thank you so much. Excellent advice. And thank you for sharing about your experiences today.
oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for the invite. I wish MVAC well and lots of great finds.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience too. If you want to find out more about MVAC's work and archaeology in general, you can visit the MVAC website at uwlax.edu/MVAC.